Hey everyone, I'm Matt Friedman, Matt F. the Oracle. It's Thursday, December 31st, 2015, and it is time for another edition of the College Daily Slant, powered by Pro Football Focus and brought to you by DraftKings.com. This is the PFF radio show dedicated to college football and daily fantasy sports, and we have a great show coming up. With me is Wes Hubert, the PFF Fantasy College Football lead writer. You can follow him on Twitter at PFF_Wes. Wes, how's it going?
Absolutely great. I've been enjoying the bowl games and looking forward to what we have this weekend. And it's gonna be a good set of games.
Yeah, it is the last weekend of bowl games, which is kind of sad. After this, there's only the national championship game to look forward to. And with bowl season winding down, this show might be our last one for a little bit. We're probably going to take a little short break after this. We're not sure, just depending on what we hear from the PFF fantasy editors. But regardless, we would like to thank you for listening throughout the season. This is our 20th episode in 20 weeks. So it's been a long grind, and we appreciate you sticking it out with us. We've really enjoyed connecting with you each week, and we hope that you rejoin us in 2016 when the show returns. Now, one thing that's not going anywhere, of course, is Pro Football Focus, where in the coming months we're going to break down all of the prospects for the 2016 NFL Draft, and you can have access to all of our premium content with the PFF Fantasy Gold package for only $29.99. All right, Wes, let's jump into it. We're going to run through the Friday and Saturday games, and then, of course, we will get to our DFS plays. Now, for the January 1st bowl games on Friday at noon Eastern, we have the Outback Bowl in Tampa at Raymond James Stadium. We have number 13 Northwestern versus number 23 Tennessee. Tennessee is an 8.5-point favorite with a 47-point over-under for that contest. What are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I'm not following in line with that prediction. I doubt that we're going to see an 8.5-point victory for Tennessee. But regardless, let's get to the details. As far as an injury reports for the two teams, for Northwestern, they're going to be without cornerback Nick Van Hoos. He's the Wildcats' number 2 corner. He will miss this game, and he does present his absence presents a hole in the secondary of Tennessee. A combination of Keith Watkins and Marcus McShepard will fill the role. A pair of sophomores who have limited experience. Tennessee wide receivers Vaughn Pearson and possibly Josh Malone could be in play there. For Tennessee, defensive tackle Shai Tuttle, their number 2 run blocking interior lineman, will miss the game. He's been out for the season for a few weeks. He's a late season run of on Tennessee's schedule facing vanilla matchups may have masked the weakness without him in run defense. They in week 13 against Vanderbilt, they allowed 202 rushing yards. So that presents an opportunity there. And for Northwestern, running back Justin Jackson will be the focus, and without Shai Tuttle, that may be he may have a good game. And also watch out for the Northwestern superback Dan Vitale. He could possibly play a very prominent role in this game. Definitely a GPP dart there. For Tennessee, like I mentioned, Pearson and Malone could make some GPP plays. A central focus of the offense is Josh Dobbs. And what's going to throw off the Northwestern defense is his ability to scramble, force defense into shadowing that ability. And it should open up running lanes for Jalen Hurd and Alvin Kamara. Both are strong plays and should see significant targets in the passing game.
All right, now at 1 p.m. Eastern, we have the Battle Frog Fiesta Bowl in Glendale. It is at the University of Phoenix Stadium. Number 8 Notre Dame versus number 7 Ohio State. That is going to be a fantastic matchup. Ohio State is favored by 6.5. That game has a 57-point over-under. Wes, what are your thoughts on that matchup?
Oh, I'm looking forward to this game. It could easily be the national championship for all intents and purposes. But as for Notre Dame, CJ Prosise is upgraded to probable with his ankle injury. It'll be a boost for the Irish offense, but Josh Adams is going nowhere. He is there to stay in that offense. Prosise is a senior, so there's no doubt that he's going to get some play. But let's kind of look at a little comparison over Prosise's last 107 snaps. He has 110 rushing yards and 0 touchdowns. Now, I know he was a lot more dominant than that early in the season, but let's just look at this for comparison. With Josh Adams taking over for ProSize after his injury, he's seen 199 snaps, and he's put up 502 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. There's no way they're going to take him out of that offense, and it's going to make ProSize a dangerous play at his salary. I believe it's $6,800 on DraftKings. And another guy that's definitely going to impact this game, but it's going to be in a different way, is safety Max Redfield. He was suspended, and he's Notre Dame's top overall safety and top coverage guy. That is definitely not good. He would have been integral in keeping an eye on JT Barrett, and with him out, it's not good for that defense. Also, their cornerback Kiveri Russell, he's a starting cornerback, their top blitzing corner. He has an injured tibia and doesn't look like he's going to play. And then on top of that, nickelback Devin Butler has a foot injury and he'll be out. This is a battered secondary. Even with the time off, wide receivers Michael Thomas and Jalen Marshall could be sneaky GPP plays. As for Ohio State, they have a hole in their defense as well. Adolphus Washington got into some trouble previously. News has been around for a while, and he is suspended for this game. And then also their number 2 defensive interior, Tommy Shute, has a foot injury. He's out. So the middle of that defensive line is going to be very vulnerable, and it definitely makes the Irish running backs a little more reason to consider them. But like I said, be wary of ProSize. I wouldn't overplay him in my lineups.
All right. Also at 1 p.m. Eastern, we have the Buffalo Wild Wings Citrus Bowl in Orlando at the Florida Citrus Bowl, of course. We have number 14 Michigan against number 19 Florida. Michigan is a 4-point favorite, and that game has a pretty low 39-point over-under. Wes, is there any reason to watch this game?
Absolutely. Honestly, I really think that the 4-point favorite of Michigan, I like that. The 39 over-under, we may see Michigan score 32 of those points. I think the over-under is really it's heavily in favor of Michigan, but at the same time, we're looking at number 19 Florida, so they're giving them a little bit of respect. There's a huge problem for the Florida Gators right now. I'll get to that. As for Michigan, their quarterback Jake Rudock, he's healthy. He was injured in the Ohio State game, and he'll make an excellent play. $5,000 on DraftKings. I can't remember his FanDuel salary. At running back, Derek Green is out, and basically that sums it up for the entire Michigan backfield. They should be avoided. As for Florida, like I said, I recommend Rudock as a fine play, and that's partially due to his late season play. Jehu Chason and Abaru Darbo have had a nice run late in the season, as well as Jake Butt, and they've all established a good connection. But the current state of the Gators roster is a problem. It all started with, of course, Will Grier. He was suspended. Well, he's now transferring. We've already seen that Vernon Hargraves, Kelvin Taylor, Demarcus Robinson, and Alex McAllister have declared for the draft. McAllister is going so far as just sitting out this game with a foot injury, but I wouldn't be surprised if it had something to do with an agent. And then on top of that, they just suspended running back Jordan Scarlett, their starting right tackle Mason Halter, and linebacker Anthony Harrell. The Florida, we can look at the statistics, look at what Florida's done this year, and they're not going to tell us the whole story. You can add some Michigan guys to your lineup, even with this over-under, and you can expect some production. I doubt we're going to see the best of the Florida Gators on Friday.
All right, I hear you there. Now, at 6 p.m. Eastern, we have the Rose Bowl game, the granddaddy of them all, presented by Northwestern Mutual and Pasadena at the historic Rose Bowl. This is going to be a great game. Number 6 Stanford versus number 5 Iowa. Stanford is favored by 6 points. There's a 53.5-point over-under. Wes, what are your thoughts on this game?
I do like that line. I think that's definitely a good estimation of what's going to take place here. For Stanford, they're completely healthy. as far as their main contributors. They have everybody that's going to be in this game is that would be is going to be in this game. Iowa, of course, Jordan Canzeri has had a few big games this year. He will return from an ankle injury, but we have to keep in mind. Let's look at a little comparison of the distribution between Canzeri, LaShun Daniels, and Akram Wadley, their true freshman phenom. Since week 9, Canzeri has played 78 snaps. He's run for 266 yards and 3 touchdowns, which is good. But LaShun Daniels, he's played 125 snaps during that same time, 363 yards, 8 touchdowns. So yeah, I mean, he's the guy that has got the ball in the end zone. But then also, if you look at his line, he hasn't done anything the last 2 games. Akram Wadley, he's played 49 snaps, created 212 yards and 2 touchdowns, which pretty much just goes to show that he's going to be a great DFS play next season. But this is a running back committee that is maddening. So overplaying any one of these guys is just going to cost you. And while this game will obviously feature Christian McCaffrey, there's no doubt. The Cardinal, they will have a slew of players playing in their final college games. The list includes Kevin Hogan, their quarterback, wide receivers Michael Rector, and Devin Cajuste. And you can count on each of those players being given an amount of responsibility to produce. Stanford's defense is not at the level of previous seasons, but they are above average in defending the run, which creates another DFS opportunity. It would be completely ridiculous to assume that Iowa's going to abandon the run, but they will need quarterback CJ Beathard to look vertically, to open up that defense and prevent the Cardinal from loading the box. Senior wide receiver T-Von Smith for Iowa, he could be a GPP target. And, of course, their tight ends, Henry Krieger-Coble and George Kittle, are always part of the passing attack whenever it's been needed this year.
All right, great stuff there. And then the last game for New Year's Day, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, the All-State Sugar Bowl in New Orleans at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. I think this is going to be a highly entertaining game. Number 16, Oklahoma State versus number 12, Mississippi. Mississippi is a 7.5-point favorite, a slate high 68.5-point over-under. Wes, give us the thoughts on this game. Is it going to be a fantastic shootout?
It is, and I'm going to jump off on a really quick tangent. But if you're into watching all these bowl games, make sure you get the actual live recording. You don't want to have to go back and watch the re-airs where they skip ahead all over the place in this show. I missed a couple bowl games yesterday and recorded the re-airs. It was not fun. But yeah, this game is just awesome. I mean, it's an awesome day of Friday bowls. Ole Miss. The 7.5 points, I understand. If Mason Rudolph is completely out, and we still don't know if he's going to come back, or if this is possibly a ploy. He was upgraded to probable. He recently underwent right foot surgery, and it's going to play out in 2 very different ways. First, Rudolph is healthy, and the 7.5 points for Ole Miss is a complete joke. It's going to create a significant wagering option, and it's going to elevate all of the Cowboy wide receivers in all formats. The second is his return as a ploy, and J.W. Walsh is going to be the starter. In that situation, Walsh would become an excellent option at $6,200 on DraftKings, but the Cowboy receivers would see a little drop in value. James Washington still had a good game their last game against Oklahoma, but it would definitely stunt their value. And then their tight end Blake Jarwin, he was upgraded to probable, which is good news for the Okie State offense because he's their top receiving tight end and their top pass blocking option at the position. As for Ole Miss, star defensive end Robert Nkemadiche, he has legal problems that will keep him out. He will be joined on the sideline by the team's top edge rusher, Fadol Brown, with a foot injury. And the loss of these two will be a major hit to that defense. The pass rush is going to be gimped. and they could provide some red zone opportunities for quarterback J.W. Walsh. He'll play regardless as the red zone quarterback, and it should provide him some additional running room. This is a great matchup for stacking players. With Rudolph, we could be in store for upwards of 80 total points, possibly. And a list of Ole Miss players will be great options and should be given a long look in when you're looking to stack.
All right, great stuff there. And then the January 2nd bowl games on Saturday, the last slate of bowl games for the season. At noon Eastern, we have the Tax Slayer Bowl in Jacksonville at Everbank Field. Penn State versus Georgia. Georgia is a 6.5-point favorite, a 42.5-point over/under for that game. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not as confident that Georgia's gonna come away with no doubt a touchdown victory without Mark Richt. I don't know. This is going to be an interesting game because Penn State's had a really tough schedule this year, and I'll get into that. But I think their 7-5 record is a little misleading. Okay, so basically, injury report for Penn State. The only injury of note for the Nittany Lions is a big one. Carl Nassib, their star defensive end, but he injured his hamstring, but he will play. So really nothing to be concerned about with Penn State. As for Georgia, running back Brennan Douglas is out with a wrist injury. Now that's not big for the deciding factors of this game, but it should leave the majority of the backup snaps to senior Keith Marshall. He could be a nice DFS punt, so definitely somebody to keep in mind. Also, wide receiver Isaiah McKenzie, he's questionable with a foot injury. But the big news for Georgia is their linebacker Tim Kimbrough is suspended, and that in combination with linebacker Leonard Floyd being questionable with an unspecified injury. Georgia's top run defense, I believe they were top 15 this year. They're going to be without 2 of their 4 top run stoppers. Penn State running back Saquon Barkley is now an even bigger play. I don't know about this game. I would definitely go in favor of Penn State with that spread.
All right, now at 3:20 p.m. Eastern, we have the AutoZone Liberty Bowl in Memphis at the Liberty Bowl Memorial Stadium. Kansas State versus Arkansas. Arkansas is a big favorite in this game, a 13-point favorite. And there's a pretty respectable, though not super high, over/under of 55.5 points. What are your thoughts for this game?
Yeah, it's odd that we're looking at these teams, considering that of the 8 teams, 6 are unranked that are going to be playing after the first round of the college playoff. So it's an interesting set of games, but. As far as Kansas State, their quarterback Joe Huebner is probable, but he's been split. He was splitting carries with Cody Cook throughout the break. Cody Cook has wide receiver eligibility on DraftKings, comes in at $4,200. He could be of considerable value if he were to see the same number of rushing attempts that he saw in the last game when Huebner was out. As for Arkansas, Brandon Allen and Cody Walker, running back, and quarterback Brandon Allen, running back Cody Walker are seniors. Alex Collins, running back, tight ends Hunter Henry and Jeremy Sprinkle, they could all declare for the draft. They're good enough to do that. We could see a similar output in this game to what California put up against Air Force. What we need is Kansas State to score some points. If they do, this Arkansas offense could put up a lot of stats. Wide receivers Drew Morgan, he had a knee injury, and Dominique Reed, he had an ankle injury, are both probable. Basically, they're full go, and we could look at some sleeper potential here with this Razorback offense.
Yeah, I definitely hear you there. Drew Morgan definitely stepped up to score, I think, 10 touchdowns on the season, most of those coming after he became the lead wide receiver. So definitely could be a big point outing by Arkansas. Now at 6:45 p.m. Eastern, we have the Valero Alamo Bowl in San Antonio at the Alamo Dome. This is really the marquee matchup of the day. We have number 15 Oregon versus number 11 TCU. TCU is favored by a point, although that line definitely could change. And there is a 70.5 point over under. Wes, what are your thoughts on this game?
Well, since you didn't mention it, I can't even begin to talk about this game without mentioning the fact that, and of course, this hasn't been confirmed, but news around PFF says that Trevone Boykin, TCU's quarterback, was arrested last night for striking a police officer. Now, we don't know if this is true or not. Just could be a nasty rumor, but if he is out, changes everything. Or TCU's offense is going down the drain. Without Josh Doxson to begin with, this was going to be a tough matchup for Oregon. On top of that, Oregon, no injuries to report. Honestly, even with Trevone Boykin, the fact that TCU is favored in this game, even by a single point, is puzzling. Oregon has absolutely been on fire since losing to Washington State in Week 6. Since that loss, they've defeated Washington, Arizona State, California, Stanford, and USC, and each of which played in a bowl game this season. Now, Trevone Boykin isn't out. Well, let's look at a comparison between he and Vernon Adams Jr. Since Week 9, Boykin has played 309 snaps. He's thrown the ball 147 times, passing for 1,035 yards and 6 touchdowns. During that same time, Vernon Adams has played 385 snaps. Now that's, somewhere around 76 more snaps. But he's actually thrown the ball 3 times less than Boykin at 144 attempts, yet he's thrown for 1,593 yards and 19 touchdowns. This is one of the hottest quarterbacks in college football. Their wide receiver core is blazing right along with them. Even with Boykin, I don't see TCU hanging with this Oregon team. And I should preface that with Josh Doxson out for the year. I think that is a huge handicap to that offense. Without Boykin, just forget it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you there. And apparently News 4 in San Antonio is reporting that Boykin was arrested early Thursday morning. And that report has also been, I wouldn't say confirmed, but been syndicated by our friends at Roto World. And they're normally pretty good at not putting false information on their news feed. So it looks like that is something that is actually true. Whether or not that impacts Boykin's ability to play in the game, we don't really know, although it is kind of hard to imagine him playing in the game if he was arrested 2 days before it. Now, finally, we have at 10:15 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, the Motel 6 Cactus Bowl in Phoenix at Chase Field. West Virginia versus Arizona State. West Virginia right now is a point favored, and that is a 64-point over-under for the matchup. Wes, what are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I love that line. It just means we're going to see a lot of offense. As far as the injury report, injury suspension report for West Virginia, wide receiver Jovan Durante, he's been suspended for academics, and his losses – is moderate, but the big loss for them, cornerback Daryl Worley is out for the same reason, and his loss will be huge. Worley is one of the better cornerbacks in the country, top 30, which is really good. He has 9 pass defenses and 6 interceptions this season. The rest of the cornerbacks on West Virginia's roster have 7 interceptions, so that just kind of puts it into perspective. As for Arizona State, no significant injuries. So the loss of Worley is going to be significant. The Sun Devils, I talked about Arkansas and a few of the other teams that are going to be playing in Friday and Saturday that have some seniors graduating, but pretty much the entire passing offense for Arizona State will be graduating. Mike Bersavici, as far as skilled players, Mike Bersavici, Devin Lucien, who's been a monster late in the year, DJ Foster and Gary Chambers. The loss in the secondary could not come at a worse time for West Virginia. Basically, I'm going to say this, and I mean this very, very emphatically. Stack your Sun Devils from the passing game. this is going to be they're going to throw the ball all over West Virginia.
All right, Wes, great stuff there as usual. And now we're going to get into our DFS plays in just a minute. But before that, I want to remind everyone that if you want to play daily fantasy football on a larger slate, a slate with more than 4 games, you can always play 1 week fantasy football for the full slate of NFL games at DraftKings.com, where it already feels like the playoffs. With millions of dollars being won each week, every play in every game could take you closer to a life-changing payday. This isn't fantasy as usual. This is DraftKings. Welcome to the big time. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and use promo code PFF. With your first deposit, you can play for free in this Sunday's $1 million fantasy football contest. First place takes home $100,000. Enter PFF for a free entry now at DraftKings.com. That is DraftKings.com. All right, Wes, let's get into the DFS plays for January 1st and 2nd. Let's start at quarterback. Wes, who do you like there?
All right, I'm going with the guy I mentioned previously, Brandon Allen of Arkansas versus Kansas State. On DraftKings, he's $5,600. On FanDuel, he's $7,400, but that's still pretty cost effective. And this is an attempt at a salary save, but this could prove to be much more. I mentioned the losses and the potential losses on offense for the Razorbacks going into 2016. Looking back at Allen's recent games, he's had 2 GPP winning performances, literally with 47-plus points, 2 in his last 4 games. And then he's also mixed those in with 2 clunkers with less than 7 points. All right, looking at the clunkers, the first was to Mizzou. In a rain-soaked 28-3 victory, just complete dominance. They didn't need to throw the ball, and with the way the Missouri offense was playing this year, not many people did. And the other bad game he had came at LSU in Death Valley when the offense racked up 300 rushing yards in a comfortable road victory. I don't see that happening this week since Kansas State is 52nd against the run, which is a little misleading. You would think the Kansas State defense was bad all around. They were actually decent against the run, but they were 110th against the pass. I think that Allen's going to throw the ball all over this team. And he's going to close out his Razorback career with a big game.
All right, Wes. Now, with the breaking news, I otherwise would have been going with Trevone Boykin. And if he plays, I think it's not hard to see why he could be a good play there. But I'm going to call an audible at the last second and go with Chad Kelly from Mississippi. Again, this is assuming Trevone Boykin doesn't play. But I think Kelly is discounted on both sides. I think he's almost a must-play, at least in GPPs. He's the second most productive quarterback in the slates, but he's very discounted. He's playing in a game that has a very high over-under, and Mississippi is favored. It could end up being a shootout. He's been very productive for most of the season, so I think he has a good chance of passing for at least 275 yards, rushing for 25 yards, and scoring 3 touchdowns. And one thing that's underrated is that he's pretty decent as a runner. I think he leads the team in touchdowns rushing, so that gives him a little extra security in his floor. Now, Wes, let's go to the running back position. Who do you like there?
All right, I'm going to go with Northwestern running back Justin Jackson. On DraftKings, he's $7,000. On FanDuel, he's $6,600, which is a big-time value. Going up against Tennessee, I mentioned that Tennessee is going to be without Shy Tuttle, their number 2 run-blocking interior lineman. And after seeing what Vanderbilt did, posting the 200-plus rushing yards, Jackson should be in for a big day. He comes at a decent bargain on both of the sites, and really he should be priced a little higher, I think, but I love the value that he comes in. He's been fed 122 rushing attempts since week 10. That's number 1 in the country. Overall for the season, he's number 2. Over his last 4 games, Jackson has averaged 153 yards, 23 DraftKings points, and a touchdown in 3 of 4 of those games, which is significant since he's only scored 4 touchdowns all year, and he's on a bit of a touchdown run right now. And even if the unreasonable spread in favor of Tennessee were to come true, the Wildcats will still feed the offense through Jackson. He's a very, very good play if you can fit him into your lineup, and which is he makes a real easy fit on FanDuel at 6,600.
All right, I hear you there. I like that one. For running back, I'm going with Royce Freeman of Oregon, kind of going on the other side of that TCU-Oregon matchup. Especially if Trevone Boykin is out, I think Freeman will get a lot of touches. I think Oregon would pretty easily build the lead in that game, and they would just really look to run their stud running back a lot. Freeman basically has been Ezekiel Elliott's production doppelganger this year, but he isn't really valued that way. He's had at least 100 yards rushing in 10 of 12 games and at least 100 scrimmage yards in every game. And since quarterback Vernon Adams Jr. returned to health, he now has that healthy index finger on his throwing hand. That offense has really been on track. Oregon is undefeated, and over those 6 games, Freeman has averaged almost 24 touches per game in what should be a high-scoring game, at least for Oregon. I think that Freeman should touch the ball a lot. I think he has a good chance of getting maybe 150 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. Now, Wes, let's go to the wide receiver position. Who do you like there?
I'm going with Penn State wide receiver Chris Godwin. DraftKings, he's $4,500 on FanDuel. He's $6,300 going up against Georgia. And now looking at his season line, Godwin has only put up 63 catches, 968 yards, and 5 touchdowns this season. But those numbers are actually much better than they look. I mentioned that Penn State, their 7-5 record, it doesn't look that intimidating. Let's look at some of the defenses that Godwin and Penn State have faced this season. Temple, number 22 pass defense. San Diego State, the number 13 pass defense. Ohio State, the number 6. Northwestern, the number 3. Michigan, the number 1. And then Michigan State, who they do come in at 67, but they're tough in the secondary. That number is skewed by some blowout victories, and they've also played some really good offenses. So. And despite playing those defenses in just those games, Godwin has averaged 5.8 receptions, 87.7 yards, and he scored 3 touchdowns in the 6 games. I mentioned that his opponent Georgia will be without 2 of their top 4 run stoppers, and those players will also be their loss will be felt as pass rushers. I have a feeling that Godwin, possibly even quarterback Christian Hackenberg, could have big games against Georgia, who has been vulnerable to the pass all season.
Some Hackenberg love there. That was a hot take. My eyebrows are singed right there with that Hackenberg hot take. Okay, I'm going with Darren Carrington from Oregon at the wide receiver position because apparently I'm in love with that TCU-Oregon matchup. Carrington missed the first 6 games of the season, but since returning to the starting lineup, Oregon has scored 45 points in his 6 games. They haven't lost a contest. Carrington is an important part of that offense. He averages over 4 receptions per game for almost 84 yards and 0.8 touchdowns receiving per game. He's scored a touchdown or surpassed 100 yards receiving in 5 of his 6 games. And even though fellow wide receiver Braylon Addison has actually outproduced him in the games in which they have both played, Carrington is cheaper, and he actually has more yards receiving in that span, and he's outproduced Addison in 3 of their 6 games in common. So he's still an important part of that offense, and I think he makes a nice discount play if you don't want to pay up a little bit more for Addison. Again, this should be a high-scoring game, at least for Oregon. I think Carrington has a good chance of finishing with at least 4 receptions for 75 yards and a touchdown, and I think he has room for more beyond that. All right, Wes, let's go to the tight end position, and since I love talking about tight end so much, I'm going to go first. I'm going with Hunter Henry from Arkansas. I have to admit, I'm not really enamored with any of the tight ends in these 2 slates. Hunter, according to a committee who decides things like this, is apparently the nation's best tight end, and he's not all that expensive in comparison to some of the other tight ends. So I don't think he's super likely to score a touchdown. He hasn't really been a touchdown scorer on the season, but it's possible. But the good thing about him is that he is involved at least a little bit in the passing game each week. Some tight ends don't even get targeted some weeks. He's always a guy who gets targeted at least a little bit. So you know that you won't get a zero from him. So I think he has a decent chance of finishing in the Liberty Bowl with maybe 3 receptions for 45 yards, maybe a touchdown, but probably not. I don't know what to say. I hate tight ends. Wes, who do you have?
Yeah, I love that you talked about the top tight end in the country because I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on Tyler Higbee. That he didn't win, considering he was injured for several games, but he deserved to win. But just watching last night's game between NC State and Mississippi State, Jalen Samuels, I'm not sure how they classify his position, but if Hunter Henry has had a better season than Jalen Samuel, I'm going to need to be convinced because it's just ridiculous. As far as my play, I'm sticking to Arkansas, and I'm going with Jeremy Sprinkle. It comes in at $2,600. I mentioned Allen, so I'm stacking him with Sprinkle in a good amount of lineups on FanDuel this week. Now, the play that Matt gave you, Hunter Henry, he's a great play. He's played 324 snaps over the last 5 weeks. He's produced 26 targets, 310 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. That is very good production. Although Sprinkle has been a top target during that time as well. Sprinkle has only played around 2/3 of the snaps at 233, and he's only seen 18 targets, whereas Henry's seen 26. He's only put up 153 yards. That's not that great, but he does have 4 touchdowns over the last 5 weeks. Henry will cost you $800 more, and he will give you some numbers, but I'm banking on a touchdown from Sprinkle, and 8 points at that tight end position would be great. If he were to catch 2 touchdowns, could win you a GPP with the right plays, obviously. But I think it's obvious that I'm thinking this Arkansas game is going to produce some offense.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think Sprinkle has a better chance of scoring a touchdown than Henry does, just kind of based on how they're using that offense and based on the touchdowns that they've gotten up to this point in the season. So I really like that call. I like it better than my call, which isn't a surprise. I normally like your calls better than my calls. Now let's go to the flex position on DraftKings. Wes, who do you have?
All right, I'm sticking in with the Ole Miss Oklahoma State game, and I'm going with running back Jalen Walton at $4,400 on DraftKings. He's not a workhorse, and he's not even a guy that's going to pile up the touchdowns. But among this slate's running backs, he's seen the 3rd most targets after Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara. That's a great group to be included with. He'll be facing the Oklahoma State defense, who's ranked 83rd in run defense. They've allowed 24 touchdowns to running backs. This game has the highest over/under on the slate, and should that Vegas 7.5 point spread in favor of Ole Miss come to fruition, we're looking at Walton could have an opportunity to close this game out in style, considering he's a senior. This will be the last game he'll be playing, at previous games, they would split the carries between a few guys. I'm thinking they may give him a little more play than usual, considering it is his last game. The matchup is great. The over/under looks good, and he only comes in at $4,400.
All right, I hear you there. I'm going with Russell Shell from West Virginia. He's the backup and kind of change of pace runner behind starting running back Wendell Smallwood. Shell actually has 8 touchdowns on the season, which for a backup is pretty high. And I think more significantly, that's only 1 less touchdown than Smallwood has. So as a touchdown scorer, he's pretty much right there. He has double-digit touches in 9 of 12 games. Most importantly, he's not super expensive. He has 5 touchdowns in the last 5 games. West Virginia, as we mentioned earlier, is a 1-point favorite over Arizona State. They have a respectable implied team total. I think he will probably get double-digit touches once again. I think he has a good chance of totaling maybe 60 scrimmage yards and a reception or 2, and then a touchdown. Now, Wes, let's go to our GPP plays of the week. Who do you have?
I'm sticking with the Ole Miss Oklahoma State game, and I'm going with Demaria Stringfellow. On DraftKings, he's $4,400, which doesn't really scream GPP, but on FanDuel, he's at the bare bottom price, $4,500. Like I said, I mean, he's not a dart throw. Stringfellow has been a decent contributor this year with plenty of potential. But Oklahoma State's secondary was a major reason for the Cowboys' drop off at season's end. They finished 92nd in pass defense. And you talked about Rebels quarterback Chad Kelly. I'm going to go a little higher with my prediction what he's going to do. I think he's going to go for 300 plus yards, potentially 4 touchdowns in this game. It's going to be a shootout more than likely, and if not, Kelly has been just firing the ball around all season, and I'm hoping that Stringfellow can snag a few of those targets and possibly put up a touchdown, and at his minimum price on FanDuel, that could play very big.
All right, I like that. I'm going with Colby Listenby from TCU. And this is more of like I think Trevone Boykin's going to play, GPP play. But you know what? Here's the thing. Even if Boykin doesn't play, I think it is still likely that a receiver on that team at some point scores a touchdown in the game. And Josh Doxson is out. I think that senior Colby Listenby will probably be the guy who scores that touchdown. I think he will probably get some of the targets that would have gone to Doxson. He's a deep threat. He has 5 touchdowns in 9 games. He's not expensive. And with him, all it really takes is one play. I think he has maybe 100-yard, 1 touchdown upside. Now, again, if Boykin does play, I really like Listenby. If Boykin doesn't play, I like Listenby a lot less. But also, if you wanted to go with freshman wide receiver Kevontae Turpin, I think that would be fine too. I think one of those guys will be scoring a touchdown in this game, and both of those guys are very cheap. If Boykin plays, I think they make a nice stack. But even if Boykin doesn't play, again, I think for GPPs, one of those guys will score touchdowns, and that means provide value. Wes, any closing thoughts on the slate?
Oh, on the slate. There's plenty of potential. I'm not sure when you'll be listening to this. It's probably going to be a little too late for the Thursday slate, but got to get your cheddar and cash bowl lineups out there. The stakes go up. We started with some lower GPP prizes, and the stakes go up this weekend. We're looking at some good gets on the Friday and Saturday slate. So get your lineups in there. All the rankings are up through the end of bowl season on the PFF website. Definitely check those out. And if you have any questions, you can send them to Matt or I on Twitter, and we'll give you some direction.
All right, Wes, fantastic stuff. And that will do it for this edition of the College Daily Slant. When the show returns in 2016, you will be able to catch us on PFF Radio, subscribe to the show on iTunes, listen to the show on Stitcher and Blog Talk Radio, and watch the show on YouTube and the Fantasy Sports Network. For Wes Huber on Twitter at PFF_Wes, I'm Matt Friedman, Matt F. the Oracle. Thanks for tuning in.